Thank you for joining us again at Jadu Lifestyle, where you can have a life and live it too. You can create a limitless life. Today, we have a special guest, Miss Cheryl Albright, and she is going to tell us a little bit about what she does. Cheryl, hi, welcome.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
I am doing well. And tell me a little bit about you. Tell our listeners a little bit about you.
Sure. My name is Cheryl Albright. I'm the owner of Soul to Soul Yoga and All Ages Therapy Services. Where do I start? I am a special needs sibling. I'm a sibling of a 43-year-old individual on the autism spectrum. Mm-hmm. And that is kind of how I got led into the world of occupational therapy. Went to school, graduated, and then went into more of the holistic side. I kind of saw the writing on the wall with our current healthcare and what's going on. And I had taken a training called Yoga for the Special Child. And then I had the great opportunity of doing what they call traveling therapy. So it's kind of like traveling nursing. You take a contract somewhere, you live there for about 3 months or a little longer, and then you move on to the next one. And so I got to kind of practice what I wanted to do in a bunch of different settings. So outpatient, inpatient, kids, adults. And my last travel contract was down here to Sarasota, Florida. And after I was done with that contract, I had worked at another agency for a little bit until, I got my business going.
Okay, so that sounds exciting. Would you say that you have a passion?
Passion, yes, but it's not an uncontrolled emotion.
Okay. What do you have a passion for?
I guess my real passion is working with those that nobody else is willing to work with. So those individuals that maybe have an intellectual disability, autism, cerebral palsy, it's just kind of the population that I grew up with, and to me is normal, but for a lot of people, it's not. And so I think I have a real, I'd say, passion or knack for them in understanding nonverbal communication and just being able to make them feel at least a little bit better about the body that they were given.
Okay, now our show is directed to the business owner entrepreneurial community. Mm-hmm. And so sure. It doesn't exempt us as business owners or entrepreneurs from having a special need child or even encountering a special need child. In my case, I'm a massage therapist, licensed as a massage therapist, and one of my early experiences was working with cerebral palsy patients. So what can you share with our listeners, business owners, entrepreneurs, about either what you do, what you offer that can help ease their or make their life a little bit easier if they had a special need kid?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways to answer that question. So when I say I help them just be able to be more comfortable in the body that they are given. So hopefully that would in turn mean decreased behaviors, increased sleeping. As a massage therapist, you hope to alleviate pain. There's some pain management in there as well. And if the child or even young adult isn't as stressed, then the parent's not as stressed either. I mean, okay. I know my brother right now is 2,200 miles away, and it's really stressful, and I'm trying to, it's a balancing act, right? Trying to balance professional and personal lives all at the same time. And I think that when one of the parts of the equation can be a little less stressed, the rest of the people in play can be less stressed too.
Okay, so can I ask you what coping mechanisms you have used to help you alleviate the stress you had to deal with? It's not your child, but it's like your child. So what are some of the things that you had to do to alleviate your stress?
Meditation. meditation. I tell people right now, if you see me in my car and I'm sitting quietly, please do not knock on the window. But in the breathing, you know, my teacher would say that the breath is the key in the door. And it's true. Like, if you can keep control of your breathing patterns, you can keep control of your mind, and you're not as anxious or as worried or as, you know, I have to remember to check in with myself sometimes because it does turn into a whirlwind. But if you can control your breath, and I know that sounds a little, people are like, what are you talking about? And what I mean is, when you become anxious, even think I-75, somebody cuts you off, you get really agitated. Once you stop that fight or flight mechanism from happening, then you're automatically calmer. And it's the same thing. It doesn't matter if it's in the car or at home or, you know, out in the world. You know, things are going to happen. So
yes,
those are my two big ones.
Okay. And how has it affected you professionally?
Well, I will say, when I first started this whole journey 11 years ago, I didn't even know what yoga was. I knew it was a thing. It was in gyms. It was a fitness class. That's literally the extent of my knowledge with it. I was a very sick 20-something. I had every diagnosis under the sun. They were working me up for autoimmune disorders, but it was migraines and irritable bowel and allergies, asthma. And within the first week of even taking the training, I was off of all of my stuff for IBS or irritable bowel syndrome. And within 6 months, I was off of all medications altogether. So I knew there was something in there that was changing, and I don't know what that is. And even a couple years later, when I had blood work done, I didn't have any autoimmune markers whatsoever.
Wow.
So I know there's something in there. I just don't know what it is. And I'm kind of a science nerd, so I'd research, you know, different parts of what it is that I do to try to figure out, well, why does this work?
Yes.
Why is this working?
Well, it's interesting that we sometimes find our passion because of a personal experience. I've read stories and stories and stories, and just this weekend I stumbled upon a TED Talk that blew my mind. So basically, our personal experience is what drives us, and sometimes it might be totally away from what we were trained in, what we went to school for, and you know where we are now. How do you think your occupation, or did your occupation drive your profession, or did your profession drive your occupation?
Yes. That's a good question. I would say both. Just
okay.
I knew I wanted to do something in the therapy world, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
We had therapists that kind of were in and out of the house as I was a kid, so I just didn't know if it was going to be speech and language, or if it was going to be OT or physical therapy or whatever the case may be. And I knew it was going to be something in that realm. I knew right away I wanted to be a teacher, but I didn't want to teach in a classroom. So I wanted that teaching role, but I didn't want to deal with the bureaucracy of the education system.
Yes, I understand completely.
And so I was like, okay. OT at the occupational therapy degree was actually the path of least resistance. For the school that I went to, it was still a bachelor's degree. So I said, okay, I'm going to do that because then I don't have to spend more money on a master's. And that's just kind of by default. Okay. So I don't know if it was really a passion that necessarily drove it, but it was just kind of like, okay, I can get this done in 4 years and then I can move on. Or 5. It took me 5, but you know, that can just kind of, and I knew I would come back to the pediatric and developmental disability arena. It was just a matter of having that paper to say that I'm allowed to.
Yes, I understand. I'm in the massage industry profession, and literally I saw my mother and grandmother actually doing massage techniques it was a part of their culture. And when I came into massage, although I tried other things before, when I came into massage, I felt like I had my perfect job. But do you have experience possibly with a client or something that you can share with our listeners that really made an impact? You know, like sometimes when I see a person walk out of pain, they're in so much pain when they come in, and when they walk out, they're like, oh my gosh, I have no pain. It really makes my heart feel good. Do you have any story that you want to share with us?
Oh, I have so many.
Okay.
So many. I'll have to think of a really good one. So when I was still doing the travel therapy, I was on a contract in Anchorage, Alaska, and this young lady comes into the clinic, and she's got a laundry list of diagnoses. There's trauma because she's already in foster care, and there's a plethora of things going on. And the foster parents' biggest concern was really that she was 12 or 13, I don't remember which, and wasn't able to get herself dressed and do basic daily tasks that a child her age should be able to do independently. And I was like, well, that is a concern. So OT, I'm in an OT space, so OT brain kicks on, and I was like, okay, well, let's try to figure this out. And some of the theories that were taught in school just didn't seem to fit this child. And oddly enough, we were next to the pulmonology clinic. So I grab a pulse oximeter. And for people that don't know what that is, you can find them at Walgreens or CVS. But it goes on your finger, and it says how much oxygen is in your blood and what your heart rate is. And so I put it on her, and her heart rate was like 120. It was like she was in the middle of a workout, but she wasn't. She was just normal every day walking around, and that was kind of her baseline. Come to find out later. I got the school district on board. They started taking readings 4 times a day so that we could try to figure out the spikes and dips, because when your heart rate is that high, you can't learn. So it doesn't matter what the cause is. So she wasn't able to sequence things because it was like she was running a marathon every day. And so once we were able to get her heart rate down, she was able to learn just those basic tasks. And that part, even though it was a travel contract and I didn't get to see all of it through, it was just kind of like, okay, this stuff really does work, and here is why.
Wow.
She's one of my favorites, but you could do a whole show on my case studies.
Well, maybe next time we can invite you to come back again and you can share all your case studies. But I totally understand where you are coming from, because it's kind of the same thing. When I developed the Jadu technique, it was what I learned in school wasn't seeming to work as effectively as, I needed to learn something else. I needed to observe more. I needed to experiment more. And I think that the technique that I developed, helped to develop the technique. So now I want to ask you, we've had the happy part, so now I want to know the sad part. Do you have any incident, any maybe story that hurt your heart?
Sure. I mean, I've had, throughout my career, I've seen young people that are just that sick and they end up passing away. It's, part of it is it's life. Like, people leave their physical body, but some of I think when it comes to the kids, especially the ones that happen kind of sudden, is kind of the worst part. Like, I was working at a school in upstate New York, and my supervisor calls over the weekend. Now, that doesn't ever happen. And one of the kids that I had worked with earlier in the week, he became septic and passed away within like 48 hours. It was like a complete shock. It wasn't, this wasn't somebody that was already medically fragile. You know what I mean? It wasn't something that would be expected. It was just kind of, it just happened. And it could happen to anybody, really. And so it was just kind of like, ugh. But I would say that's probably the hardest part. But it's also life, right? Like, we have those things that happen in our life, personal life too. So.
Well, in my case, when I was working with the cerebral palsy patients, I was a med waiver provider for the state of Florida, and 100% of my clients from that part of my practice with cerebral palsy. And after 5 years, emotionally, I couldn't take it anymore. I actually gave my clients away to someone who I had trained, and